All right, let me bring you back for a second. We have so much material to cover this morning, so I just want to keep things moving along. How do we define trust? Give me some feedback. What are some of the conversations we have about words or phrases that describe trust, please? Prabin.
We were playing with some keywords. So some of the keywords might be transparency.
Ah, good. Yep.
Other might be honesty or authenticity.
Mm-hmm.
Or that might be integrity. What was the last one? Integrity.
Integrity, yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. They're all words that would describe trust, aren't they?
Yeah.
Things that would make a difference to you. By the way you define this will actually come to your own value system in some ways too, in terms of what you value. Yeah. Other thoughts, please?
We were similar. We were captain.
That's all right. Just checking on who's captain. Yeah, Josh.
We were had a similar sort of method. We talked about understanding, dependability, and reliability, as well as those things that are already on the board. And safe was the first word that came up as well.
Safe.
Safe.
That's interesting, isn't it? Yeah. Reliable is a good word. The more and more you think about this idea, this concept of trust and how it can actually make a difference to your sales or your business, it becomes a critical piece. Others, please, in terms of other ideas around trust. Yeah. Substantiation, wow. So in other words, providing evidence to you being the trusted authority or you being the person who's deserves to have that relationship, yeah? Substantiation, I like that, evidence, yeah. Okay, someone else please.
Just aligning what you say with what you do.
Alignment, yeah.
Or the other way around, what you do with what you say.
Very cool, very cool. And this table, over here?
We had very similar themes. We talked about testimony a lot, so substantiation. A big one for us was, I think, listening as well.
Yeah. Yeah, great piece. Excellent. And so let's think about this from a sales context, because of course I've taken a body of work today that is a 2-day body of work, made it into 3.5 hours for you this morning, and given it a real sales focus. But this could also be given as a program that was on team development and a whole range of things internally with businesses that were non-sales related. You could actually do this program. But listening is a key piece when you think about it from a sales point of view, isn't it? From a sales point of view, isn't it so easy for us just to be chewing the ear off the person and not actually listening to what they're saying? And active listening, asking questions along the way. Being curious is a key piece, yeah? Curious. It's a good word, curious. My dad always said to me, be curious. Can I ask this question here? So in terms of consciously applying it, consciously being aware of it and then selling it, do you believe that we really can in terms of thinking about the critical components of trust and then selling it? Russell?
Definitely. It's about creating expectations and delivering or making promises and then keeping them. I think finding opportunities to do that is an easy way to develop trust.
So let's take that one step further, because Russell does a lot of work with brands. And with your work, do you find that people who are very conscious of this will then reinforce that message over and over again in terms of following through on those promises and selling it?
Your entire strategy.
Yeah.
We meet you, we make a promise about the time we will call you, we then do that. We show up at the time we say, we create opportunities to keep promises.
Excellent. One of the things I've often said to people when I'm mentoring a person in sales is that we need to remind people of the value we create. We had this conversation with the consultants yesterday, in terms of talking about how we consult in the market, and consulting is all about reminding people, the client, of the value you create. So knowing the value you create before you go to the client, but then also after you leave the client, reminding of what you just did is a big piece of it. And that's the same with everything you do in sales, is that we keep reminding them of the value, then all of a sudden trust is developed, but it's really, really hard for someone to come in underneath you to take the business away. Really hard, because you've got that really solid relationship. Of course, the other part of this is when sales and trust, I guess, were you going to say something? I thought it was a buying signal. That's all. I'm attuned to looking for auction signals, When trust is not going well, it's amazing how it's easily lost and hard to get back. I mean, just ask this guy. He broke our trust. I don't know if someone said 27 times last time I actually talked about this, or maybe it was 127 times. But Tiger Woods has never got his game back. He's never got his game back. He's never been back on top again. Do you think there might be something on his mind that every time he looks to front the ball up and he's got a gallery of people watching him, there's something in the back of his mind that's playing on the fact that maybe he lacked integrity in some ways? That he broke our trust? I mean, some people who were just Tiger Woods supporters have just gone, no way, not the way he misled us all. I mean, this is a great picture, I think, in terms of the way Tiger Woods with trust. But then there's another guy, of course, wasn't there? And this guy here, Lance Armstrong. I mean, my dad, in his later years before he passed away, was carrying that little yellow thing around his wrist, you know, saying, Lance this, Lance that. And I got to tell you, I reckon it just got cut up straight away because this guy really broke our trust too. So it's hard to get it back once you lose it. And the whole fundamental about sales is how do we develop it, then maintain it, maintain it, maintain it.
Excuse me, a question.
Please.
How would you do that when you've got a client that you've never seen before and they've never seen you and they step into your area? And how would you then explain trust to them? Because I mean, you can say, have a look at our website, have a look at our testimonials, but you need credentials in order to be able to achieve the talking point. What am I doing here? Why should I not be next door where it's $1 cheaper?
Well, I think, Ted, one of the things that we know about trust is it takes a long time to develop. You don't gain it like that. It takes multiple experiences to develop that trust. So in terms of having to build it right from the start, I think what we do is we create building blocks. And over again, we just keep delivering. And what Russell said is spot on in terms of making people conscious of the fact that we are continually doing what we're saying we're going to do,
And
reminding them the value.
You then listen to your client and the client says, well, I've heard some terrible things about this or about that. That you've got evidence that you can then say, excuse me, yes, we've known this and we've seen this. Now, how about this, right? Whether it's a code mark or whether it's a quality control business or whatever you're in, that you have evidence that you can fortify what you're hoping to get, which is namely trust. Because that, I totally agree, is the first and foremost thing to get the sign here, press hard.
Well, I think this is a really good word.
Yeah.
I love that word, substantiation, because what it basically says is you can make as many promises as you like, you can make as many claims as you like, but you're going to have to back it up.
Exactly.
And evidence is going to have to come through in what you do, but also support materials. We talked about this yesterday in terms of evidence behind our statements we make with clients. It's a big piece, but one step at a time. But it's only when someone says, I'll be back to you on Monday with that proposal, and you're still waiting on Wednesday for the proposal, you're going, hang on. Or when someone says, you know, I'm going to definitely get back to you tonight with the answer on that stock that was missing or whatever else, and they don't ring you back. I mean, we used to have an executive diary business many years ago, and with our diary business we had around about 15 full-time staff and about 27 including part-timers. And in that business, you know, we're under the pump during October, December with deliveries. Under the pump, everyone was ringing because you just make all these sales in such a small period of time in the year. I've often said to you, I think 83% of our sales was made in 16 weeks a year, which is nuts. Everyone wants a diary, you know, before Christmas. But there were times when people rang and said, where's my stock? Where's my stock? And I just said to the ladies in the office, I said, even if we don't have the absolute answer for them, please make the commitment to ring them back at the end of the day. And at 4:30, people just love that call to say, I'm still looking into it. I haven't got the answer yet, but rest assured, I'm on it. I'm still looking at it. People are okay with that. But it's when you break the promise and you say 4:30 and you don't ring. That's the problem. So this whole idea of breaking trust is a key piece. Now let me quickly tell you about David Horsager. David Horsager wrote The Trust Edge. And his materials were first class that I thought, boy, I'd love to incorporate this into my work here in Australia. David and I were literally in line getting lunch at the National Speakers Association conference in the USA. So I've mentioned to you before, I go every year and there's around about 1,500 to 2,000 speakers. It's a lot of hot air in one room. A lot of speakers, not too many listeners. And we're all standing around talking about how wonderful we are, adding zeros onto what we're turning over, everything else. So that's what you do in the speaker's business. You just puff your chest out and say how wonderful you are. And so we're standing in line and there's David beside me and he said, oh, I can't help but notice you're in the business of trusted advisor selling. And I said, yeah, that's my brand. I said, actually, I'm reading a great book on trust right now. And he said, really? He said, what's it called? I said, The Trust Edge. He looks across to me and goes, I said, oh my God, this is incredible. So we had a chat, got along like a house on fire, and all of a sudden we've developed a relationship where he sent me the materials and we have a license arrangement. So he really is someone who's done a lot of work on this, and I don't want to even think about the number of hours he's put into this to write his book, The Trust Edge, and a number of you got this book now. So The Trust Edge was written on the basis of surveying and working with a number of companies in the top 500 in the USA to find out what their answers were around a number of different subjects. He's obviously asked them, what do you believe are the pillars of trust? And he's correlated all that information to put it together in one book that's a fabulous read. And I know some people who got the book yesterday are already impressed with it. So this idea of Trust Edge is all about how do we develop a case for trust in the first place.
The single uniqueness of the greatest leaders, organizations, governments, and parents of all time is trust. The first part of my research proved out how a lack of trust is your biggest expense. Think about it. For the trusted brand, we'll pay way more, we'll come back, we'll tell others. The trusted leader gets followed or voted for. The trusted salesperson gets bought from in spite of price almost every time. The trusted teacher, professor, or parent gets respected. If you think trust is just a soft skill, think about your credit score. It's really just a trust score. The more you're trusted by the lender, the less you pay over the course of the loan. Think of a supplier you trust. One call's enough. A supplier you don't trust, a bunch of stress later, you still didn't get what you wanted. I was asked to be the commencement speaker at my university this year, my alma mater. It was a privilege. Took my kids to the university. You know the first thing I showed them? My post office box. 22 years later, that post office box was still in the same spot, still had the same number on it, but it was different in one way. Today, the post office box at my university has a lock on it. A thumb combination lock. What's the cost? A few bucks for the locks? Yeah. More than that? Time. Every time I want to reach in and grab my grades or my check for working in food service like I did freshman year, I have to thumb combination lock just to get inside. The cost is time. When trust goes up, cost goes down, skepticism goes down, people are willing to take risks, so innovation goes up, loyalty goes up, everything changes when trust increases just a little bit. Trust is a lot like a tree. It takes a long time to grow, and yet a touch of carelessness, and you can burn a whole forest down in a fraction of the time it took to grow. Trust reduces transaction costs and the need for litigation. Trust is not a soft skill. One study found companies with high trust levels outperform companies with low trust levels by 186%. Another study found 80% of people stop buying products or services from companies when their trustworthiness comes into question. In another study, costs were 5 times higher with the least trusted supplier than the most trusted supplier. Trust, not money, is the currency of business and life. Jason Gottke's in New York City and he notices the coffee and donut stands. How many have been to Manhattan and seen the coffee and donut stands littering New York City weekday morning? Yes. And Jason's going up to these different coffee and donut stands and he's researching and he finds that one coffee and donut stand is different than all the others. Ralph's stand. If you go to Ralph's stand, you ask for one glazed donut, Ralph shouts back in a voice the regulars know well. 75 cents! You'd think he'd scare everybody away. But not Ralph. Ralph's line is longer. If you try to pay Ralph, though, $1 for that 75-cent donut, Ralph motions you on to the end of his little shop on wheels, where there's a tray. On the tray, there's change strewn about. In the middle of the tray, there's a cup. In the middle of the cup, there's cash bills sticking out of the cup on a tray, on a stand in New York City. What are you supposed to do at Ralph's stand? Make your own change and pay what you owe. We might expect this where I grew up in north central Minnesota, 3 hours from the Twin Cities, Minneapolis, St. Paul, 8 miles from the nearest town of 500 people and way more cattle. I can still remember going home from football practice 4 miles north of Verndale, and there was Mr. Olson's veggie stand. Some veggies are there, and there's a little box of some money. You can make your own change, pay what you owe. We might not expect this, though, in New York City. What happened at Ralph's stand? Ralph served twice the customers of any other stand research in New York City. He had twice the revenue of any other stand research in New York City day over day. He served his customers in half the time. He didn't have to take off his latex gloves like all the other vendors. And Ralph had loyal customers. They loved going to Ralph's stand. Why? Because of trust.
So what I'm going to do at the beginning of each of these pillars, I'm going to get David to talk about it. It's simply the research he's done and everything else. So we're going to talk about 8 pillars of trust this morning, and as you go through it, it'll make a lot of sense to you in terms of these different building blocks in developing trust. But I think it's always lovely to hear from the author, the person who actually did the work in the first place. So let's have a quick look at some of the things he talked about. And you've got the manuals in front of you with the 8 pillars of trust in there. The trust edge is the competitive advantage gained when others confidently believe in you. And I think if you're one of the top 1% of people in business and salespeople out there who understand this, you're going to be a long way ahead of the other 99% who just don't understand how trust plays a critical role in sales. Now, I know this sounds like it makes a lot of sense in terms of this idea of trust, but I'm consciously disappointed when I'm out working with a salesperson in the field of the lack of effort put into the sales calls, the lack of effort put into follow-up, the lack of effort put into the preparation of the visits we're going to make to customers. It's a wing it process, a wing it. Now, some people who are obviously very well trained will have a process that they have down pat in going to see customers, and they'll actually know and do the prep in advance. But the point I'm making here is that if you can actually develop this competitive advantage, there is no doubt that people will continue to do business with you. So that's what the trust edge is. Everything of value is built on trust, from financial systems and to relationships. I think that's certainly true in terms of the personal relationships we have outside even the business relationships. 186%, how much companies with high trust levels outperform companies with low trust levels. So I've just taken a few of these numbers and thoughts that David had in his speech there, just to download with you to let you know some of these ideas and research that's been done. 80% of people stop buying from companies when their trustworthiness comes into question. He found that there are 5 times higher transaction costs for the least trusted supplier compared to the most trusted supplier. Now, why would that be? Why would it be up to 5 times more